Wow. All right, friends. We're doing it. We're doing it. Ask me my former self why I scheduled a panel discussion on the launch day for my book, and I will tell you because I love talking to authors and I love talking about books, and it's my launch day, and this seems like the best way to celebrate. So without any further delay, let's get right into it. What if writing your book wasn't the finish line, but the moment everything starts? Today, we're celebrating what happens when a book becomes more than just pages on a shelf. When you publish with intention, you're not just sharing your ideas, you're stepping into new rooms, starting fresh conversations, and creating momentum you couldn't have planned for. Books open doors, sometimes quietly, like a surprising email from a dream client, sometimes loudly, with standing ovations at speaking gigs or major media invitations, but always powerfully. And when you build your book with the right foundation, it doesn't just open one door, it holds every door open for what's next. It is the perfect day to talk about this because the day we record this episode, my newest book, Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews that Drive Revenue, officially launches. Now, during the 2-week soft launch, this book reached #1 bestseller in 7 categories across 3 countries. But more importantly, it received more than 200 written Amazon reviews. Now, many of those readers said that this is the book they wish they had when they launched their first book, and I totally agree. It's designed to help you create readers into clients, reviews into revenue, and your book into a lasting business asset. You can get the book and bonus content at booklaunchbrainstorm.com. And now I am thrilled to welcome today's panelists, authors who know firsthand how publishing a book can spark surprising opportunities and incredible growth. With me, I have Carolyn Choate, who wrote Supercharge Your Website Traffic, Unlock the Secrets to Infinite Website Visitors, to help you discover the 4 essential types of website traffic: borrowed, organic inbound, organic outbound, and paid, and learn how to mix and match them to create a personalized, results-driven traffic strategy that actually fits your business. Also, we have Eric Lucrezia, who wrote Getting into an MBA in the USA, the No BS Guide from Candidate Coach, a no fluff, step-by-step guide to standing out and getting accepted by top MBA programs around the world with expert advice tailored to where you're applying. And Susan Fitzell, who wrote Neurodiversity in the Workplace, Maximize Success through Inclusive Dynamic Workplace Design, a strategic guide for C-suite leaders to unlock innovation and boost performance by building inclusive, neurodiverse teams through practical, business-driven solutions. Please join me in welcoming Carolyn, Eric, and Susan. Carolyn, this first question I'm going to send over to you. I'd love to hear a little more about the audience you had in mind for your book. Welcome.
Thank you. That's a great question. As we know, that's like the first thing you have to think about when you're marketing your book. I was really inspired to write this book because in all of my networking and all the clients that I worked with and helping with websites and funnels, over and over and over again, I would meet these people who had amazing businesses, a heart for service, helping people, and no idea how to get the word out about it. And it was just heartbreaking to see them like put up a website and then, oh, I don't know how to get people to it, and try a few things and just feel like overwhelmed. So I said, people need help. So I need to write a book. And it's just something that I have a passion for. So I put this book together so that entrepreneurs who don't have a degree in marketing can say, okay, I now know how to get people to my links to my website.
You know what I love about this is someone recently described my books as whenever I figure something out for my own business, I then end up writing a book about it. Like I don't intend to. Like it's not how it starts, but it is a really easy way to transmit all that knowledge. And I just feel compelled to do that. And I think similarly, you
I
were
did
like,
too, yeah.
people aren't getting it. Oh, they worked so hard to build this website. No one's going to it, but they could have, it's like when you know something, you feel like you have to share it.
I want to share it with everybody. Shout it from the rooftops. I found something that helps. Here, everyone, come.
Yeah, I feel like that's similar to for you, Eric. So tell us kind of how you got into the work. You've got a number of books on this topic. This one happens to be focused in the US, but I know you've got ones focused on different countries. What led you to write books on this topic?
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. I'm super excited to be here today. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, my book series, Getting into an MBA, is kind of born out of a world tour and a pandemic. And what I mean by that is I've been working in education and coaching and advising for about 25 years. In the States where I'm from, I used to live in Spain. I've lived in Australia, and France has been my home now for 15 years next month. And when I say the pandemic, I had just left my job. I was the director of recruitment for one of the top business schools here in Paris. It's called ESSEC. And I had just left, and I was all getting ready and excited to launch my website as an admissions consultant. And boom, COVID happens. So we didn't know how long that was going to happen, right? And we were just all stuck at home. And I was like, well, I better get all this information onto paper before before I forget it. So there was just no movement. So I remember every day I was sitting out in my hammock writing on Google Docs on my phone this first book. The first one was actually about France, but as you mentioned, I covered a few countries in this series. Kind of call it the Lonely Planet for business school.
I tell you, my chiropractor in me, I'm not a chiropractor, but I see one, winced thinking about you curled over on that hammock typing away throughout the pandemic. But I also know the pandemic was a time to write, that like you there was one way to use the time wisely. And I love that you created a whole series. Like you didn't just stop with one country. We'll come back to hear more about the why behind all of this. But first, I want to welcome Susan to the show. Welcome, Susan. Who do you have in mind for your book?
Thank you, Robbie. Neurodiversity in the workplace is targeted to individuals like C-suite people and senior leaders who are responsible for driving organizational culture. And it's there because if their culture fosters innovation and new patents and success, the company's going to be more successful. And that's what CCs want. And neurodiversity are having divergent thinking. It's the same thing. I mean, neurodiversity is one word, but divergent thinking is what it's all about. And if you want to look at that as divergent thinking, people who think differently, then you've got the resource to create innovation and get your patents and be more successful. They're not going to be sticking with the status quo. People who are divergent thinkers often think outside the box or solve incredible problems inside the box. It doesn't matter, but they're the people you want when you're stuck. I've gotten a lot of calls from HR leaders, recruiters, DEI professionals when we were doing DEI, and people who run ERGs, and which are professional resource groups, who wanted information on neurodiversity. So I originally thought I would be providing it to managers. And then as I worked on the book and interviewed people and got calls and leads in through email, I realized that it's really for almost anybody, including the neurodivergent person themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the things that I also included in the book, so that if you're an employee and you're struggling because you're neurodivergent and you don't even want to share that, it tells you how you can advocate for yourself. So that's my audience.
I think that could really evolve. That what you just described, I think it's really important for an author to have a reader in mind as they get started, and to write narrowly at first to that reader, but other audiences will resonate with the material, and you may end up having a broader market for the book, the ultimate book, but it has to speak at least to that one reader. And I know you worked hard to make sure that there are sections that could be handed off to the employee as well as the leader. And your background's in writing for education. You have an education, like that was your work. And I remember talking to you about this and how all the students that were neurodiverse that you were supporting for all those years, decades, were now in the workforce. And you were like, who's helping them now? And I love that through line. So were you nervous about writing for a different audience, or because you've already published several books, like, was this like not a big deal? Like, is there anything different about approaching this book versus the other books you've had?
I think so, because if I write a book for parents or educators, it's like second nature. I could probably write it in my sleep. I just know that audience so well. And at first I thought, well, will corporate people people in business sectors or other organizations and associations feel like I have something to offer, given that I've spent my entire career, for the most part, with the exception of the last 10 years where I've been working in corporate and businesses. Would they think I had anything of value to share to them in their workplace? Now, I did spend some years in corporate. I've had that experience in my background, but it's not been the majority. And so what I really think made a difference for me here is I was much more cautious. I was research based. I wanted to make sure I was accurate. I wanted to make sure that I was solving problems that they really needed solved and not just coming up with pie in the sky in my own way. And because I've worked with educators for so long who demand hands-on, tell me what I can do. Don't just give me theory. I mean, teachers do not want to listen to theory and pie in the sky stuff. They want, tell me what I can do to help this kid tomorrow.
Mhm.
I also made my book that way. And the feedback I'm getting is that people are like, oh my gosh, this is like a manual. This is like a handbook. It's very different than a lot of business books because I have that mindset. And I think that's what I bring to the table.
That actually is kind of your example of your book is also what you said earlier about where innovation comes from. And, you know, because you were taking ideas from another industry and applying it to this one,
Right.
you wrote the book differently than a lot, as you said, a lot of quote unquote business books are written, not just theory, actual manual, step by step, which is also the way I tend to write. I love that answer. And Carolyn, you have a history of writing fiction, nonfiction. You have another book that's also about publishing a book. It's called, actually, You Published a Book, Now What, right? So you and I are very much in line. You have a lot of books around book launching and all that. So, but is there anything different about how you approach this book? Did you feel like you had different metrics of success for it or a different audience for it? Like what shifted from what you've done before to this book?
Oh, that's a great question too. I think that I like to put out books explaining my kind of unique philosophies around sales funnels. And I will side note say that's because I have autism and ADHD. So unique out of the box thinking, and I have struggled in the workplace my entire life. So I might have to pick up your book. But I like to have things available because I want to help the maximum number of people, right? So I can build you a sales funnel, but maybe you can't afford that. You don't want it that way, you know? So I write a book. Here's how you can do it yourself so that there's something for everybody's, you know, ability and desire. With this book, it was more like, this is not a service that I offer, but it's something that people who have websites, have funnels, have anything they want to promote online really need to know. So it's like a pillar, a foundational bit of information that all of the people I interact with really need to have so that I can do the work that I do with them.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm going to come over to Eric. Eric, you started with a book that was based in France where you're currently living. I see you've got books for Spain and the UK and Canada, USA, which is the book we included in this this campaign. Yeah, how are you approaching this? Because was writing the initial book hard to do because, you know, were you hanging out with other authors? Did you understand the process? I mean, you had all that knowledge because you had been working in the industry. You were planning to be the consultant who was hired to coach people through it. That was put on pause. Thankfully, you were able to go back to that. How did you get over the inner voice? You know, a lot of times the first book, there's some angstiness there. Probably you didn't have that angstiness when you were writing book 5, but like, how do you get started with this project?
You know, a lot of it came from working in the industry for so long. So for the last 6 years where I was employed by someone else, another entity, the business school, ESSEC, I, spent a lot of time supporting applicants. So that came in the form of talks that I would do in kind of small or large group format. Sometimes it was presentations or just various emails. So there was just so much material, so much content that I was able to draw from. Also, lots of conversations with fellow admissions people and recruiters from schools all around the world. And we had our gripes, the kind of same stuff we would see from applicants that were just frustrating because they were not doing the things that would showcase them as great applicants, right? So I had a lot of things in mind, advice on how to help someone stand out as a strong applicant anyway. When COVID happened, we didn't know how long it was going to last. I started writing, like I said, on my phone on Google Docs. And what I did was I brought in a friend who was working at a competing school, INSEAD, also here in Paris. And I got a lot of insight from her as well. So it became a kind of collaborative project. And for each of the books, it's not just me Googling stuff like what is an MBA like in Spain. I actually brought in 5 contributing editors from various top Spanish MBA programs to contribute their insights. So it is very much, again, it's not just me Googling. So I'm very confident in the information in the book because it's actually coming from people to this day working in these admissions offices.
Okay, wow. This is actually a really interesting approach to a book that I have a feeling could be useful to others who are listening. You have expertise, but you wanted to broaden your expertise, and you brought in other fellow experts, but that also positioned you as the convener, right, of other experts, which puts you in a really good position in your network. And now they're still employed at these schools, but your name is bandied about as the go-to coach. I'm hoping this actually is the case. Like, how has that played out for you in real life? Like, is this like really strengthened your network of people in admissions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely something that is given credibility. People can either they see the books online, or I also attend quite often MBA fairs in cities around the world, mostly here in Europe, because it's me that's paying my flight to China or or Colombia. You know what I mean? Whereas the school is paying before. So the paperbacks are often with me, and people see that as well. But to Carolyn's point, not everyone can afford your services consulting on their funnels for marketing purposes. So this is kind of like the DIY version. So it's, you can hire me for the full package, or for $20 you can have a book.
So I'm curious about the relationship with the editors that you brought on for each of these books. How has that evolved?
Oh, first of all, it's strengthened and maintained friendships, right? And when I do travel, if I'm in a city where they are, I mean, I was just in Barcelona in March for a master's fair, and my good friend Leticia Rea, who's one of the contributing editors for the Spain book, we met first, I think, at an MBA fair in Beirut, and we'd see each other around the world and maintain that friendship. And so yeah, we had dinner a couple months ago.
And Carolyn, you were about to jump in. I cut you off. Go ahead.
I get very eager. I think it's such a great reason to write a book when you get those same problems popping up over and over again, the same questions that you're like, oh my goodness, everyone keeps making this exact same mistake. Like, put it in a book, send them that way so you don't have to keep saying the same things over and over and over again. Like, that's a great reason to write.
Yeah. And Carolyn, while I have you, when you were writing this book, you didn't really have an offer tied to it because it was this knowledge that you really wanted to share. But you and I met the other day and had a fun conversation about how the book could be tied back to your business. I'm curious what thoughts are still swirling in your brain after that call. Like, you have so many skill sets, you have services that are available. Like, help tie together this book to the work that you're doing. I'd love to just hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's still a struggle to connect the dots in that straight line. And I love a straight line when it comes to funnels. I'm so good at seeing them in other people's. And then, in my own, I'm like, I wrote this book because people need this knowledge, but it's really a step that comes after you have a website, after you have a funnel. So that has been a bit of a challenge because I want to give this information, but then it's, but do you have anything worth sending traffic to? So it's just like part of the message, the intro to the book has a part about like, this is what website traffic means, because not everybody understands what that term is. And if you're sending traffic someplace, do you know for sure that it's the right place, that it's a place that is going to meet your goals, do what you want it to do? So let's think about what conversion means for your website or your Eventbrite link or your nonprofit, whatever it is. Can we make sure that it is converting before you spend so much energy and effort bringing people to it?
I love that. And I think that is one of the things that separates the experts that I want to hang out with from people who just happen to know X. Like, they know how to set up Facebook ads, but they don't ever ask if the page that you're directing the ad to is converting, right? Like the strategy piece is so key here. And that's something I know you can help people with. And we were talking about there being some sort of checklist or quiz or something that helps people decide whether they're ready for an influx of traffic. I mean, there is a way in which there have to be at a point where this makes sense, or else you're spending money, as you said, not the best outcome. So, this is an example where a lot of authors, even those of us who've had books for a while, like don't always have it all mapped out. And in some ways, I think this could happen even to people who have a lot of books, because writing books is not actually as hard as it was the first, second, and third time. And so you're like, sure, all right, I've got a couple of months here, I'll just bang out a book. But like thinking about the bigger piece of how it all fits together sometimes actually happens after. And I'm always trying to get people to think sort of upfront about that, just because it is a factor that will, change the course of your business. I'm going to come back to Susan on this question, because I think, Susan, you similarly, you're shifting from the education background that you had for a very long time to more formally into the world of corporate. This book was going to be sort of helping you make that shift. You did a lot of thinking ahead of time, but then things change, right? You learn something new in the process. So in reality, what has happened between the book and the outcome you were aiming for? Are you getting booked to speak and consult, and like, is it all lining up? And how are people finding your book to even begin with, since they don't know they're looking for it?
Well, to be totally transparent, pretty much all leads coming in stopped when DEI was banned.
Rough.
Even though neurodiversity has nothing, it's really not DEI. It is not the same thing. But because diversity is in the title, I think people went, whoa, and people are being cautious. So what the readers have told me, when I look down at the reviews, or when I listen to people who've read the book or know me and know what I know for the book, they've all said this is really not, they've agreed it's not about DEI. It's really about managers and managing and leading and making sure that people feel safe in the company to be their best selves and bring that forward. Because the reality is, these neurodivergent personalities, these neurodivergent people are already there. Many are hiding, some are not. But I've had interviews with employees who say, I haven't told anybody I'm ADHD. As a matter of fact, one time I had an interview with two that, we're on Zoom together, and they were friends for like 7 years. And one said, we only disclosed to each other that we were neurodivergent about 5 months ago. And I admitted that I was ADHD, and I admitted that I'm autistic. And they hadn't ever said anything before to each other because they were afraid. And that limits them. And everybody I've talked to said that if I can't be myself at work, then I'm not going to be able to put my best foot forward. And instead, I'll clam up. I just won't say anything. And being that I'm also neurodivergent in many ways, including ADHD, autistic, dyslexic. I mean, I got a bunch of them. and I could just really think back at my entire career when I was working in corporate in a big technology company, and when I've been in schools as a leader, and when I've been on board of directors, how my neurodivergence, especially the piece of me that's autistic, has really caused me to sometimes doubt myself, hold back, not share, or leave. And I'm an entrepreneur. I left for a reason. And so, I understand it. I get it. And I'm hoping that I can help people and help management and employees and leadership embrace that talent instead of shooing them out.
I think both of you are describing a problem that I think happens to a lot to authors, which is that you have to explain to your audience why they need you, and reach them with a message that they were ready to hear. And you have to be solving a problem they know they have and they're willing to admit, which is not usually the problem that we are here to serve. Like we have much bigger problems that we think they should be handling. But we have to meet them where they are and like do that educating. And, for you, Susan, it's really about going back into that network and having those one-to-one conversations,
Mhm.
having the employee introduce you to their manager and having that one-to-one. It's a slower roll because you aren't going to just, the money is not just like pouring in. There's some resistance to this, but ultimately, people need what we both are talking about. I'm actually curious, Eric, if as people read your books and they realize they can't just, they could follow it and try to DIY and do it yourself, but they realize, maybe I want some expert help. Like, how do people find you from the book? And then what's the service that you can be hired for? Are there downloadable content or, opt-ins, QR codes like in the book, or contact info, LinkedIn, etc.?
Yeah.
And then what's the first, like, does it go from book to, really expensive package, or is there smaller steps along the way?
Yes to all of that. But first of all, I have to respond to what these women just said. First of all, ADHD as well. Second of all, I was having a conversation last night. It was a dinner party, my partner's friends, this guy, oops, sorry, phone's ringing. This guy who he worked for the Asian Development Bank, very high position. And he's like, I think I have ADHD. And like at the table, he's like, this is like my coming out. And I'm like, as a queer person, I feel like there are some parallels here. And I think Susan, Carolyn, and me, I would love to collaborate on a book about coming out of the neurodivergent closet or something like that.
Really?
I feel
That's
like 99% of entrepreneurs are neurodiverse because we tried to squeeze ourselves into that box of jobs and was like forced out, and so we were like, all right, fine, I'm just gonna write my own rules.
I just want to
We
also
have to.
say, Eric, I love that you just shared and disclosed that this happens all the time. The three of you are here on the same panel based on your availability in your calendar, right? And a lot of times there's overlap in the book content. When I'm reading the intros, it becomes very clear right away, like that there's some connection. And I wasn't getting that vibe as I was reading each of your books. It's very different. But clearly, like, the overlap in the conversation about this, I love that this is a space where we can share that. And when I was first getting started in entrepreneurship, talking about networking, I was often talking about the difference between introversion and extroversion. That was the context. And that evolved. And now I would say it's not about that I'm having those conversations. It's about neurodiversity and neurodivergence and how that shows up in our networking and in events and creating spaces where people can be more of their full selves and all of that. And being an introvert or an extrovert is like a piece of that puzzle, or being shy or outgoing is a piece of that puzzle, but we can't like separate that from someone being ADHD, right? Like that's like a part of who they are.
Exactly.
Eric, back
Should I
to
answer
you.
your question? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you asked it kind of in two parts, like how does people go from the book, and there are different steps and so forth.
Sure.
So, there are plenty of examples where somebody who's met me at one of those masters or MBA fairs, wherever in the world, and they've seen my books, they've perhaps bought my book or not, but because they've seen it or thumbed through it or read it because they got it at home, then they get in touch, they call me, email me, whatever, and then say, can we have a conversation? And that could convert to an actual client where I'm working with them. Not that important to get into the details, but like there's hourly and then there's unlimited packages. Right? Sure. So you were sort of asking, does it go from book to very expensive? Not necessarily. It depends what people are prepared to do. But what I think the book does is not only gives me that visibility, well, I know it does give me that visibility, but also that credibility and trust. And so people definitely have a sense of, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. And so, they can try me out for a little bit and then go on for a full package, or if they want to do it for a couple hours, it's really up to them. And I'll work with their budget,
You know what I love about a book like that is that it helps them realize that they actually didn't know a lot. Like, I think this is good for a lot of books. Like, the book should leave people actually being like, huh, I didn't know. Like, like it should solve the question they originally had. It should give them enough information and be like, that makes sense now. But it should also leave them a little like, whoa, and that too, and that too. And like I imagine, Eric, the nuance of how to show up as a great candidate. And if we layer in this piece we were just talking about, neurodivergence, like into like the candidate process as well, how do people bring that in so that they're chosen and they're in a good environment and all that? So I love this.
Yeah. Well, Robbie, literally today, I was working with a client for an executive MBA program here at INSEAD, which is here in France. And this person like just dropped the bomb of like, I'm ADHD in her essay. And it just had no context. Like, do you think it's okay to talk about this in France? I know in the US it's more open. I was like, yeah, but let's talk about the positive aspects. Let's talk about, you know, the flip side of it. Yeah, it's a source of creativity. It's problem solving. It's original, you know, solutions that you can see, and you know, so
and
that.
to Bobby's point too, like letting people see how much knowledge you have increases the value. Like they understand, oh, okay, you're not just somebody who's going to like proofread my resume. Now I understand how many steps are involved. I can really say, oh, okay, this is worth a lot of money to hire somebody to help me with this.
Yeah.
Same could be said for books about making sure your website's ready for all that.
It feels so
inbound.
easy though. Like the website, the funnels, to me, it's just like, it's so simple. It's so clear. So it's hard for me to value it because
this is exactly what happens. Like when you're the expert on a piece of content, it's like it comes naturally to you. And then other people are like, wow, that's really good. You should write about it. And you're like, oh, really? Susan, speaking of things that are hard to do, but you achieve them, your book has 52 global ratings and 50 written reviews, which means nearly every single person who went there to leave a review did. Some of them maybe just, sometimes they just have trouble with Amazon's, right? So that's amazing to get 50 reviews. That is something I know that you and I set out to have happen around this book launch. But it takes a real dedication and a process and follow through. So I'd love to hear why you decided for this book to focus on getting reviews. Like, why was that important? And is that different from how you've approached other launches? So let's just start with that question.
Well, when I did the last three, I called them my three big books. They were education books. And I did launch those appropriately and hired someone to help me. But my focus then was not reviews. It was, you know, Amazon bestseller and the categories and that sort of thing. And I knew I had a market for my books. I do make money on those books because I wrote them to be textbooks and workbooks for they're multi-purpose books. And I did the same thing with my business book. A college, a university could buy the neurodiversity in the workplace book for their students and use it. It's a textbook as well as a book to read with stories, etc. The difference was that I didn't have my launch person anymore. She retired. And so I was looking for somebody and found you. And you were the one who told me that the reviews were what was more important. You're the one who educated me about that. I really hadn't thought about it before. And then your book that you are publishing now was actually, that's the material you had me use. I mean, basically I looked at your book and I said, this is what you had me do. Here are all the steps you had me do. So it just worked out that way that, and now I realize the value of those reviews because I've read every single review on my book. And what has been really wonderful is some people have literally said, here's why it's important to this sector or that sector. And I learned from those reviews. I actually learned more from those reviews. So it's been exciting. I think the reviews are great for sales and Amazon algorithms, but I also read them. So I've learned from them too, and I can take that forward.
And your book's been out for a bit, but I can see that you had reviews even as recently as April and May. Quite a few came in around the last Kindle flash sale that we did earlier this year. How are you approaching getting more reviews throughout the year, and how has the Kindle flash sale been a part of that?
One of the things that I think helped me to get the more reviews was I first had the Kindle. I started with the Kindle first, which I guess is unusual. According to my Kindle designer, that was not the norm. And then I published the print book. And so by doing that in two phases, it kind of helped me get reignited to in April when I actually published the print book. I was able to go out again and I did do one of these Kindle flash sales then, and that helped me to really launch that print book and relaunch the Kindle book. I actually re-uploaded the Kindle book because I made adjustments and changes as I made the print book and added 60 visuals, 60 images. So I think that knowing that I was excited about the print and how much better it was, I just kept going out to my people and sharing it again, shared it with my educators, because I realized there's a lot of neurodivergent teachers and teacher leaders out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just all came together.
I want to circle back about what you just said about the timing of the Kindle versus the paperback. But first, Eric and Carolyn, this is your first time participating in this Kindle flash sale. So Eric, I'm curious what led you to say yes? Like what was intriguing about the idea?
Because I needed to do something different. It wasn't working enough, my sort of grassroots approach. I tried sharing it in all sorts of groups on Facebook and other LinkedIn and so forth, groups that were related to MBAs or GMAT or grad school or whatever, business, careers. Nothing was really hooking big. I had some interns helping out with some press releases, contacted some education journalists, hope that might work. Not so much either. But if one of them happened to like it enough to say something about it, that could really boost the visibility, but unfortunately it didn't happen, at least not yet. And so, yeah, I don't even remember how, but somehow I stumbled upon your LinkedIn page. We had a bunch of people in common and you got good references.
Yeah. That's always important, right? People have to speak highly of you, not just have a good website. So you have 43 global ratings for your USA book, and 38 of those are written reviews. And I focus on the written reviews because when it comes to two factors, one is the human factor. More than 90% of buyers check reviews before making a purchase. And the second is the algorithm. So Amazon's search page algorithm decides where to put your book based on the keyword search on a search page, based on the quantity of reviews, the quality of the reviews, the recency of the reviews, and the percentage of verified reviews. And you seem to have just kicked back up your goal around getting reviews, because I see 4 new reviews, Eric, just came in this last few days, because you just dropped your Kindle book price in preparation for the Kindle flash sale that's coming up. And I always suggest to authors, this is a good time to make a short list of people and go reach out to them. And Carolyn, have you been able to leverage this upcoming Kindle flash sale? What led you to say yes to it? How are you thinking about in relation to getting more reviews for your book and getting the word out?
Yeah, I just really want this book in more people's hands. So a promo and a sale seemed like a great way to do that. And more reviews actually over time does lead it to be in more people's hands. So focusing on the reviews is the number one thing you can do to help it spread over time. And you'll notice Robbie is not going to read out how many reviews mine has because it's pathetic. But my focus was really, before I met Robbie, I was thinking, if I have a handful of reviews, then at least it's not just like blank stars there. That looks nice. Okay. So I got 5 reviews from my launch team and I said, all right, pretty good. Not bad. I'm all right. But I have been inspired because I met Robbie when we were introduced for him to be on my podcast. And when he told me about the kinds of results he has in his launches, I said, wow, this is like the launch that we all, as full-time authors, especially I'm a fiction author primarily, we know to do this launch. And yet he has juiced it up to a degree that nobody's ever seen before.
Right.
And I was very inspired. So I was like, okay, yeah. So I made a list. I reached out to people ahead of the sale to get more reviews. I have 1 new one that came in, a couple more people that said they would. So, it's slowly rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I just saw that I saw your review count just popped up a little bit because you've been reaching out to people, and some really nice long reviews too. And you can think about how to repurpose those. I've been asking people to change that, to take them and put them as LinkedIn recommendations, or put them on Goodreads or the Storygraph, right? There's some other places that we can repurpose those reviews. There's a question that came up the other day. Someone was debating whether or not to join the Kindle flash sale, and they said, oh, but 99 cents, I worked too hard for this book to sell it for 99 cents. So Carolyn, why is it not a big deal? Why, or is it a big deal? Why should people
leader? Have you ever heard of that? It is, first of all, I love that the Kindle flash sale, it's temporary. It's not like you're going to permanently have a 99-cent book. You giving people a reason to say yes to it right now, get momentum going, and then it goes back to normal price. But if you are focused on this book is where I'm going to make my income from, then you're thinking too short-sighted. And the book is the stepping stone towards other things. Even if you're not a business author, even if you don't have an offer connected to it, the book, is always a stepping stone towards other things, towards your backlist, towards your other books, towards anything else. If you're just narrowly focused on this book just needs to make sales, so I'm going to prioritize sales over getting reviews, over getting it in the hands of more people, like, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. And I see people do that with the reluctance to send out advanced reader copies of like, oh, I don't want to send out too many. Like, no, send out as many as you possibly can. Can you get 1,000 people to read that book for free and then post reviews and post on their Instagram and do it? Like, there's millions of people out there that could be reached by that. It grows exponentially. So don't hold yourself back when it comes to getting it in people's hands, because word of mouth will always be the most powerful way to sell books as well.
Yeah, I love that you have the background and experience of being a fiction author as well as a person who writes these nonfiction, more business-focused books, because I believe that my process works for all genres. I just don't. I sell it towards the entrepreneur because I think there's a value proposition that I can make, because there is a sale of a service. The end of this is much more than a $20 book. But if you have a backlist of books, someone once told me the way you sell book number 1 is you write book number 2 and 3. So I think for fiction authors,
book number 1 really low or free and get them hooked so that they buy book 2, book 3, book 4 as the price goes up.
And also, my wife is an avid listener of audiobooks. She does 250 or so books a year, and she often joins ARCs. And then she discovers new authors. Then she wants to read their backlist. Like, it happens all the time. So, like, even in the world of fiction, I think all these processes can play out. But I think authors themselves have a little angst about it because they're a little short-sighted. And Eric, you're a little newer to this whole world. I'm curious if anything, even as you've met me and as you've talked to these other authors, have you changed your focus of how you market your book? I know you've tried. I feel like you're trying a lot of different things. What lessons are you drawing from just a little bit that you've gathered so far?
That there's so much content out there that you need a more cohesive, thought through strategy. Like I said, I kind of tried to grassroots it. Had the support of some interns at some point along the way. I still have all the socials out there. But marketing is a job for a reason. I mean, it is a career field. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm a solopreneur. So, you are the billing department, the IT department, the marketing, you know what I mean? And then, oh yeah, your job. So, that's, and I know that, and I love a steep learning curve and all of that's there. But so here I am, I guess, trying the next thing. And I do agree that reviews are definitely valuable, and I look forward to seeing the results of that. So, as you said, this is my first time doing this flash sale. Happy to be a virgin flasher. Does that make sense?
Oh boy! I want to start calling this the Rekindle campaign, because I think it's for authors to rekindle their network connections. So Eric, answer give you a prompt. Okay, the prompt is, because I'm an author. I would like you to finish that sentence by helping us understand what doors have opened because I'm an author.
Because I'm an author, I don't know. People can appreciate that I can write. I don't know.
You mentioned earlier you have more credibility and build some trust with people. Is that what you're seeing?
Oh, definitely. And I don't think it's that one thing, because besides, I also have a podcast. I mentioned social media. I mentioned attending events. So I think it's really marketing. I feel like marketing people always want to know the very specific act or action or brochure or whatever to pinpoint and identify, this is what closed the deal. This is what made the conversion. And that's BS. I do think it is an ongoing repetition, variety, ensemble of things that result in that. And so for me, the books make a lot of sense. Especially as I'm coaching people to write essays for admission to Stanford MBA programs, for example. Knowing how to write is an essential skill.
Nice. Thank you for that. Susan, how about you? How would you answer the question, because I'm an author?
Well, because I'm an author, I have been able to leverage my work to support other people, like a lot of people find me through my education books, and hopefully that'll eventually happen with my business book. But it does give me credibility. I was interviewed for a training position at a sensor technology company several years ago, just before COVID. And the HR person who was considering bringing me in, she said, "You need a business book. You know, many of us will not hire you unless you have a book."
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. I mean, I was a professional speaker with a certified speaking professional award designation, and I'd been speaking for 30 years. And what she was hiring me to do was to teach engineers how to be good speakers. So why would a book be necessary? But she just said, she says, without that book, there's less credibility. And for us to hire you, you need that. And now I have it. And so that's a wonderful thing. I mean, I have a book that covers the topic that I'm interested in. Hopefully that works out.
Thank you. Carolyn, as we wrap up here, how would you answer that question? Because I'm an author.
Because I'm an author, I have an excuse to talk to people, and I have a low-cost, easy way for them to see my heart and my personality and come into their world.
I love it. And how can people find you and follow your work, Carolyn?
Financiallyfreeauthor.com is the best place to start.
Fantastic. By the way, all these links, including to your socials, websites, your books, will all be at bizbookpubhub.com. Susan, how can people find you and follow your work?
The best thing to do is just to go to susanfitzell.com. It's my name. It's easy to find, or just Google my name, because I'm all over the internet. I can't hide. Hide.
I love it. And Eric, how about you? How can people find you and follow your work?
Sure. I mean, besides LinkedIn, my name, Eric Lucrezia, if you can manage to spell that. But my website is candidate.coach. There's no com, just candidate.coach, or my YouTube channel. You can search for that the same way. There's lots of good content there.
We're going to put all these links, including to your YouTube channel, at bizbookpubhub.com, which is where we're going to find all the show notes from the episodes we air every Tuesday and Thursday. So much valuable information. I love how you all just freely shared your journeys with us. I think there's a lot of learning to take from these conversations. At that bizbookpubhub.com, you'll also see a couple dozen experts that we curated who help entrepreneurs become successful authors, writing, editing, publishing, and marketing their books, and a monthly free virtual networking event that I love to invite you to. And information about these Kindle flash sales that we keep talking about. I host them 3 times a year, and even more information than that. I keep losing track, but there's so much good stuff there. Check it out at bizbookpubhub.com. And panel, thank you so much for this conversation. Just really appreciate it.
Thank you, Robbie. Yeah.